But for the sake of clarity, let's just put that aside. Think what you may of either or both, because here is what we want you to focus on this night. The true fundamental culprit in all of this.
Remember how technology promised to make us more connected and not less? Actually, I think Facebook in the beginning did that for a lot of people. But that's when Zuckerberg realized he could monetize Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. They could create algorithms that were designed to individualize us rather than connect us. They studied our own peculiar little habits, and in the process, what they ended up doing is not connecting us, but actually isolating us in a way that we are held captive. For example, the endless notifications that you get on your phone. My daughter was telling me she was on a business trip to Phoenix, and she said my girlfriend and I were sitting at the pool, tanning at the hotel, and we started talking about something that we were interested, a product they were interested in buying. And she says, and then I opened my phone up, an advertisement for that very product popped up. Well, it's not like somebody out there named Bill is listening to your conversation. But there is somebody named William who's written an algorithm.
Who has seen an advertisement that has convinced you that your microphone is listening to your conversations?
Data is the world's most valuable asset, according to the new Netflix documentary, The Great Hack. But we don't know exactly where it all goes.
What we've realized in making this film is that your phone is not listening on you. But why you feel that is because you have given up so much of your data and you've become a lot more predictable.
That just simply cycles through your system. And when it hears certain words or certain products or certain mentions, it grabs it and creates an ad sent directly to you. It's part of this amazing technological world.
And they're not doing it with just Paul and Rick. They're doing it with millions of people around the world. And the more people and the more data that they get, the more money they make. Is that correct? As rudimentary as it may sound?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the profiling gets more and more precise. As we engage with this material, we help them profile us more and more precisely. And as a consequence, the boxes they manage to put us in get smaller and smaller and more valuable. So the advertising space they sell gets more expensive, and essentially they make more money.
Each one of us are feeling this, are being commoditized and are really fueling this really $1 trillion marketplace, which is taking everything from, your likes, your Google searches, your Google Maps, GPS, to whatever you buy using credit cards.
But what ends up happening is people stop having serious conversations about anything that matters. They may have chats, but they don't have heart-to-hearts. In fact, we are creating a whole generation who's lost the ability to have a conversation. And many times when people are complaining about the level of the volume of the vitriol in our culture, people shouting at each other and being mad and so forth and so on, nobody seems to make the connection that part of that is a generation that's never learned how to verbalize their feelings and express them in an intelligent way. And the only way they know to react is the way they did when they were 2-year-old and they threw a tantrum. And they are emotionally, mentally retarded, if I can use that term. I got scolded last time I did. Because they've never developed. And even the proliferation of profanity is a result of people who don't know how to communicate well enough to use real words. So they try to emphasize whatever they say by blurting out some offensive expletive to make their voice or their feelings or their point of view known. And I have found with so many of these people that you simply sit down with them and say, can we talk about you? That something suddenly changes because these are people who feel like nobody ever listens to them. And there's so many people who live on the edge of something being liked or not liked. fact that even now, this service that we're listening to, and it's a neat thing to see something like that you can have this great impact that we can reach around the world through things like Facebook or YouTube or podcasts or websites and all the rest of the stuff, Twitter and so forth. But at the same time, what is beginning to develop is a YouTube subculture of Christians who never darken the door of a church, but their entire spiritual experience is watching it on TV or watching it on the computer or on their phone. And I agree, I get it, this is a great thing for them to stay connected, and I see that good positive side of it, but over time it becomes a substitute for actually engaging other people.
That's how to respond. BBC is a series about a long series, right? Heard that bit going on. Don't move about too much because I'll put stuff on it. Right? This time I'm telling you. Right, under the cord. This is about half a bag.
We may be more technologically advanced, but as the adage often says, and it's so true, we've never created a weapon we've never used. The reality is we may advance our technology, but eventually the technology becomes the way in which we create more death and destruction rather than less. If you read Marx and you read Engels, they really believe that man had it all in him, and we're just being held back by oppressive religious experiences. Religion, he said, was the opiate of the masses. In other words, we look at how horrible our life is and how oppressed it is, and what we do is we just believe in God in the next life, and therefore we ignore what's in front of us. But he says, if you could raise the status of man to where all of his needs are met and all his problems are taken care of, then he will just naturally get rid of religion. But it didn't work, so when Lenin came to power, what he did, he says, we'll start by wiping out religion. And what he did is created the gulags, a nation of slaves. And we're forced to admit, as Solomon said, think in mind, here's a man who had the richest man in the world in his day. He had access to every single resource you could possibly want. He never worried about retirement, right? Solomon said, the race is not to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the learned, but time and chance happens to them all.
The race is not the swift or the battle.
In other words, he said there's kind of a randomness in life. You cannot really control the floodwaters of life when they come in. Life is going to happen to you regardless of how well or unprepared you happen to be. Life is what takes place. Ironically, as that reality crushes our fantasies, we often develop what I would call God-replacing ideologies. The trash bins of history are filled with these ideologies, and it's amazing because they never seem to quite go away. They're just another generation rediscovers them and recycles them and gives them a new label, but it's really kind of the same idea over and over and over again. I mean, whether it's the sensuality of paganism that's on the rise again in our culture, or the mythology of the Greeks and the Romans, or the mysticism of the Babylonians, or even the more modern ideological delusions that really came to the fore in the 20th century. Things like utopianism, that it's possible to create this perfect existence where everybody lives in love and harmony together. Or the idea of evolution, that every day in every way we're getting better and better. So that as we look at the change in culture and society, we attribute that to our upward and onward growth as we evolve into higher and higher beings. But the heart of this delusion